Before we get underway, I wanted to wait. What? Shoot! I wanted to talk quickly about the lecture content presentation that I'm putting online. I have the stuff for next week ready. I haven't put it up yet because I just didn't quite have time before now. I'll get it up tonight. I have a meeting. Well, actually, I might be able to get it before lunch, but I have a lunchtime meeting, which will I won't be able to do it then. Let me teach all afternoon. But I spent the weekend at a conference about other aspects of teaching methods that I use, but sort of the trend, or I hesitate to call it fad, but the thing that a lot of people talk about is this flipped teaching method, which I believe at the beginning I talked a little bit about that idea, which is essentially to give you stuff ahead of time to look at so that when we come into class, we have time to concentrate on more than just the basic presentation stuff. Before I went to the conference, I was already kind of thinking about this, but at the conference, it really was sort of driven home. And the reason why I don't have the stuff ready yet is because what I was thinking about and what I decided over the conference was to switch from giving you one big, sort of encapsulated lecture to giving you a series of smaller things to watch. And really all it's going to be is that one big lecture just broken up into smaller things. And it might not really make a difference to you one way or the other, but just there's some data out there showing that students can concentrate well on a certain amount of, certain length of material. And while it's certainly possible that you could have, watched something that was an hour and a half long and just broken it up and watched, 10 minutes and come back to it later on, something like that, to actually break it up into smaller pieces will make it manageable, and it's sort of like a commercial break, so you know when to stop watching or something like that. And it'll break it into kind of manageable topics. So I've done that for next week's material. I just haven't actually gotten around to posting it. And that's partly because as I was working on it this weekend in between workshop meeting stuff, the Wi-Fi at the conference center where I was a little weird on the last day, and it kept not letting me upload the recordings to the Prezi site. So I had to leave it, and then I didn't get a chance to do it last night when I got home, so I was doing it this morning while I was in my office. And then I realized I forgot to go through and I have to do this thing at the beginning of the semester called attendance verification, just to verify who's actually attending the classes. It's a little annoying because of all of my students, which let's say I have across all of my classes 100 students or something like that. I don't know the exact number offhand. Only one person who's technically on the roster for any of my classes hasn't come to class at all or logged into Blackboard. So I basically just have to go through and say, yeah, you're here, you're here, you're here. And it's just an administrative aspect of my job. But I think I was supposed to get it done by midnight last night or something like that, and I just completely blanked on it. So I did that because I'd get yelled at it if I didn't. And I didn't get to post your stuff. But I will post your stuff. Like I said, hopefully I'll be able to do it before right before lunch. But if not, it'll be this evening. I might do it right after I finish my afternoon class, but still that's like 4:30, so it'll be a while. There will be, well, actually, let me. Okay. So, for instance, we're doing the cellular level of organization stuff, and when I get them posted, where is it? What the heck? Oh, there. Okay, so I think it's this one. For whatever reason, in this format, it doesn't show you the full title of things. But I think this one's, obviously everything for this chapter is cellular level organization. I think this one says cell membrane is the rest of that title. In fact, yeah, that definitely is it because of what the other stuff's here. So definitely watch this one tonight before class. And then the other ones you can watch later on. For this coming week, we're going to, I should say this. What we're going to do is concentrate on a particular clinical situation that illustrates how this basic cellular stuff is important for the class. And the cell membrane is very important to understanding that. So for tomorrow, if you don't get to watch all of them, that's fine. Definitely watch the cell membrane, which will be the first one of the sequence. I think I'll go ahead and number them. So I'll say, number 1, number 2, number 3, so that you know what order they go in. So definitely watch that cell membrane one. And then you should go ahead and watch the rest of them during the week. But for Thursday's class, there's another one that's specifically on the protein synthesis, which is this one right here. And that'll be relevant with how we continue with stuff on Thursday. The rest of the stuff in here, the nucleus, cytoplasm, cell cycle, I guess that's all of them, aren't going to be directly part of what we're doing in class, but I've put them in there because you are responsible for the material in that chapter. I am to some degree expecting that you have a little bit of background in cell biology from having taken biology at some point in the past. And so the rest of them there are to be sure that you hear some explanation of things, especially for the material you have to do for that week. But we're going to concentrate on the cell membrane and protein stuff for what we're doing next week. So those will be in there by tonight. I don't remember if I exactly said how long things are supposed to be, but the generally accepted length is 10 minutes or less. And I have to apologize for the cell membrane one. It is not 10 minutes or less. It's like 15 or 20 minutes. So it's a little longer, but everything that's covered in there I wanted to have in one presentation. I may in the future, which doesn't really affect you, I might break it into 2 different things, but for now it's one. And it could be that it's that long because these recordings are pretty rough. The program I use to capture the audio, I do have some editorial control over it. So if I say something wrong, I can stop the recording, start over, and then cut out the bad parts, and it splices together the good part before the mistake, and then I can add stuff on after that. And I can also go in, if it's not obvious, I stammer kind of a little bit. There are a lot of ums and pauses, which is horrible speaking, public speaking methodology, but it's kind of how I speak. So I am trying to go in there and cut out some of those. I can see, on the recording, there's a graphic representation. And so when I'm not saying anything, the line's just flat. And so I can go in and cut those things out. So the one that's 15 or 20 minutes long might actually be something I could cut down to closer to 10 minutes just by tightening up the recordings a little bit, get the ums and pauses and that sort of thing out. But I'm not to that level of auditory editing. Audio editing. So I'm starting to do that, and especially with the later ones, when I was getting a little bit better at it, you'll see it, but or hear it, I suppose. But they're not perfect. It's trying to get the material out to you in a meaningful time frame, but we'll see. I really wish I could have gotten it up earlier, but I kind of wanted to see the whole thing together, all the different parts, before I posted anything. So I will do that. And I think what I'm going to do, whatever. I'm just going to the last week's thing where there's a link to the thing here. If I break it up into multiple things, then I have to put multiple links, which is just going to make what's in the folder a little bit longer list of things. So I think what I might do is I might put a folder that's the online content stuff, and you go there and it'll have the list of the things that you have to watch. So, for instance, I don't know if this is what I'll call it, but I'm just trying to show you. So when you go in here, you'll see a folder like this. I'll probably have some little blurb under explaining, that's the recording. And then when you go into this, you'll see a list of the recordings there. I think that might be the best way, and it's not that elegant, but the best way to be sure that what you see on this page doesn't get unwieldy with 5 or 6 recordings put in there. So that's probably what I'm going to do. So look for that tonight. Well, the folder is now there. I just put it there, and I'll put the recordings in there. Be sure you watch the cell membrane one before tomorrow's class. And like I said, it's 15 or 20 minutes long. And then the other ones, if you don't get to watch them tonight, that's fine. The protein one, you definitely want to watch by Thursday. I might actually start talking about the protein stuff a little bit tomorrow. We'll see how that goes. Hopefully not, but so that's my plan. Now, I have this up here mostly just to kind of tell you that I made a little bit of change in the progression of things that are going on. So obviously last week on Tuesday and Thursday, we did the chemical stuff. We did the water molecule stuff on Tuesday and the protein folding kit things on Thursday. And then the lab topic that's under the Unit 2 week, which technically today is the last day of that week, used to say molecules in it. But really, because I was able to present the content online, I didn't spend so much time in class last week talking about what bonds are, that sort of thing. You can get that online. So we don't have molecule stuff to do in lab. That actually, if we had done the molecules lab the way that I used to do it, we would have done the maybe the water molecule stuff, but definitely the protein folding stuff today in lab. So I decided, as far as the lab topics are concerned, to move the microscope lab up to today, which is good because that gives us 2 full lab periods to deal with tissues, which is still a little bit of a rush, but it's better than it would be if I had to do the microscope stuff next week also. There is a molecules lab quiz that was meant to be the lab quiz for today, which is set to be due before next week. Still do that. It's really on the stuff that we did in class last week. Water molecules, protein folding stuff. So complete that. We just didn't happen to do that stuff in lab. And then you have a microscope lab quiz, which is in the Unit 3 or Week 3 folder, because originally I was planning on having that done then. But we'll do the microscope stuff obviously today. I'm not going to change the due date for the microscope lab quiz, which would make it due before I think September 29th. I think it was because we would have done the microscopes. Wait, how'd that work? Today's the 21st, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which means that so we would have done it on the 28th. So it would have been due October 5th. That's the due date for it. I'm not going to change that due date because you do have a lab quiz due before next week's lab in the molecules lab quiz. So I'll leave the microscope lab quiz due date the way it's set, which I believe is October 5th. But we're going to do the stuff today. So you can go ahead and get that out of the way if you want to. But if you feel you got plenty of stuff to do, I'll leave the due date where it is so you can do it when you need to. I want to talk about microscopes. In this being how do I do this? This being an anatomy class, of course, that'll do. No, I don't like that. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah. So now I'm putting this up on the board because I am capturing what I'm doing today with the mic there and whatever's on the screen. So what we're about to do doesn't lend itself to that kind of capture at all because I'm going to pull one of these microscopes out and show you all these parts. But there they are in that picture. If you do need to go back to this recording or something like that, then you at least have it there. That's not exactly the same kind of microscope that we have brand-wise, but all the pieces are essentially the same. They're fairly standardized. Now, this is an anatomy class, and usually when you think of anatomy, probably you think of looking at the body in a torso model or similar kind of model like this. But we use the microscope for anatomy also because there's anatomy of cells and tissues and those sorts of things that we need to study as well. So starting today and through the next 2 labs, we're going to concentrate on that aspect of anatomy. And I want to spend today making sure everybody's has the skills necessary to use the microscope. And there's a few things about that I want to go into in a sort of preamble. But I want to be sure everybody's comfortable with the microscope so that when we do the things over the next couple of weeks, meaning next week and the week after, you're going to get the most out of it that you can. Now, it's very nice that this is a fairly small class, and we do have a little extra time since I'm doing this week, that I will be able to give everybody a little bit more individual attention to be sure that you're comfortable using the scopes and getting to know the stuff they're going to be looking at under them. But really, using a microscope is a skill that takes quite a lot of practice. And truthfully, I'm not the greatest microscopist in the world by any stretch of the imagination. And part of that's because when I worked in anatomy as a student, graduate student, and a researcher, I didn't use this kind of microscope. I used an electron microscope, which is a very different, I want to say beast, but that seems a little bit cynical. Device, whatever. It works on a lot of the same principles, but it's a lot more complex in how it works, and the controls to make it do what it's supposed to do are really quite different. I haven't used light microscopes a whole lot in my life outside of teaching and some of my early student years. So I'm passable using it, and certainly for the level of detail that we need to look at is fine. But we have a cell biology course here that's taught by one of my colleagues, and I would never want to have to teach that because, or a microbiology class where you're looking at very, very small things like bacteria. I wouldn't want to be in charge of the microscopy for those courses because I just don't have the skills for that. So using a microscope is a skill-laden activity. It takes some experience to do it properly. But we just don't have time in this class to really give you the practice you need to become an expert with a microscope. We're really only going to do it for a few weeks, and then it'll come up occasionally later in the course. And when I say course, I mean AP 1 and 2. So there's a few times that we'll get microscopes out to look at tissues again for specific organ systems. So what I want to try to do for today is to set up that you have enough skill to do what you need to sort of in the short term. And if you go on to taking some other classes a little bit more microscope intensive, you'll hopefully get the exercise or practice you need with the scope to some degree. So that's sort of my way of saying you're going to get a kind of quick and dirty exposure to the microscope. And I'm going to make sure everybody can do the bare minimum to get by in this class and know what you're looking at. So the microscopes that we have here in this lab were purchased when we moved into this department, physically this department in building 2. Does anybody know when this building was built? So I ask this question every year at this point, mostly because I want to kind of see if people pay attention to things. Nobody ever answers that question. Now, sometimes somebody will try to answer the question just based on the appearance of the building, because architecture has some style to it, and you can kind of guess when the building was probably built based on its appearance. And sometimes when people do that, they get it within about 10 years, but you can actually tell me exactly when this building was built if you pay attention to things. What's the best way to figure out when a building was built? Right? Right, there's a cornerstone with a date on it. Has anybody seen the cornerstone for this building? It's that corner down there. So if you're walking up from the on the quad side and you pass building 13 and coming up here, you should see that cornerstone. I'm actually not sure if the date is on the bottom corner stone, so to speak. It might be a little bit higher, but it's on that corner of the building over there. The building was built in 1987, or it was completed in 1987. Whether it was built in 86 or something like that, I'm not sure. But the date on the side of the building is definitely 1987, which may be before some of you were even born. I don't know. The year when I realized that I was teaching people that were potentially younger than the building, teaching them in really made me feel old. So not that I've been here since 1987, but it still, it sort of put things in perspective. So this department used to be, I think, in building 20. And when the money was raised to build this building, I think building 13 also, a lot of departments moved into new spaces, and we were somewhat involved in helping to plan the space we were moving into. And so since we're a lab science department, we design labs, that sort of thing. We also had a certain amount of money to outfit the department. And so we bought the most of the models that you see in here, the microscopes and all of those sorts of things, when we moved in. So the microscopes are 28 years old now. Okay. But they're in pretty good working order because as a department, we really try hard to make sure that we treat them the best they can. The students know how to use them as well as they can, so that they are going to be available to be used by students in later years. We would like to replace the microscopes, update them, and put new ones in. And as a department, we kind of started that process. Back in 2007, the school raised or started a fundraising project to get like $4.5 million, something like that, to be used for upgrading certain things around campus. And so we were earmarked to get a certain amount of that money to buy all new scopes for the department. Does anybody know what happened in 2007, 2008 that might affect the kind of money that a school would be able to raise? 2008, anyway. You never thought you'd be in a science class and have to think about dates and current events and that kind of thing. The economy crashed. Okay? Remember right before Obama was elected, things kind of went downhill. So over the 2007 fundraising year, when we got commitments from various people to donate money to the school, when they finally found out that they didn't have that much money, they withdrew their pledge of support for the school. So we didn't get quite as much money, and so we weren't able to replace the microscopes. We did purchase some, and as a department, we decided to prioritize for the labs that needed them the most. The microbiology labs, there's 2 of them upstairs, need really good scopes because bacteria are much smaller than the cells that we have in our body or something like that. And so they got theirs, and we had a 3rd lab's worth of scopes available. Officially, I'm going to say I don't know why, although I actually kind of do. I don't know why they ended up in one of the A&P labs, which actually is the one down the hall. I'm just going to say I don't know, although actually I do know, and I kind of am upset about it. But we didn't get them in this lab, and we didn't get them in the next lab next door. None of the intro biology labs got them, and we just don't have the money for them. And we don't know when we're going to have the money to purchase new scopes in the future. So we need to treat these as well as we can so that they last as long as possible. And we do pretty well between making sure all the students use them appropriately and the fact that one of the faculty members in our department runs a microscope repair business on the side. So like over the summers, he goes around to local high schools and helps them fix their microscopes. So if something happens to one of our microscopes during the year, we can just ask him to take a look at it. He can fix it usually. But a lot of making them last so long comes from treating them well to begin with. So in this cabinet here, we have 20 microscopes. We have 4 more in this cabinet down here for a total of 24 microscopes. And there are 24 seats in this room. So the idea is that we have enough so that if we have 24 students in this lab, which sometimes happens with our night courses especially, there's a scope for every single person in the lab. If something happens and one of the scopes just needs to be fixed or something like that, we'll of course pull it. But we usually have enough scopes for everybody that could possibly be in the lab. The scopes are numbered, starting with number 1 here and down through 20, and then 21 through 24 down there. Wherever you're sitting, there's a number on the side of the outlet box in front of you that tells you what position or station you're sitting in. So starting with 1 here, down to 6, and then 7 through 12, et cetera, that's where you're sitting. That number corresponds to the microscope you should be using. Okay? Now, it might not seem like it's terribly important that you get the particular microscope that you're using, but it helps things move a little bit quicker if everybody's sort of grabbing whatever microscope they need to, and they don't get put back where they're supposed to, if things get out of order and that sort of thing. It can be kind of tough for us as a department to keep track of which microscopes need attention and that sort of thing. So if something happens on the scopes, I can tell my colleague who does repairs that, room 500, scope 16 needs some attention or something like that, and he knows where to go. But if I just say, one of the scopes in my room isn't working and I don't know which one it is and they're all out of order, he's not going to be able to isolate which one has the problem. So keeping them in order is good. And also, you can be part of the process of making sure the scopes are working properly. So if your scope isn't working properly, or it's different from the last time you used it, your experience with that same scope over the times that you'll use it will give you a little bit of an expectation of how it's supposed to work. And you can say, well, it's a little bit weird today. And that can be useful for us to understand what needs to happen. So when you come to get your scope a little later on, when I give you the instruction to do that, be sure you know which number you're sitting in front of and get that scope. The microscope slides, which I showed you briefly where they were when I was talking about the shower, and I'll talk about them again, they're numbered also, so you should get the microscope slides and the microscope that corresponds to where you're sitting. Now, when you get one of the microscopes out of the case, to be sure that you carry it securely, you should reach underneath the plastic and grab the arm, and then carry it with both hands, one of them underneath the base to support its weight, and the other one holding onto the arm, again, underneath the bag so that you have control over it. If the bag happens to fall off, you can pick it up later on, but make sure you have a secure hold on it. When you put it down in front of yourself, you should be looking at this space that I'm showing you right here. Okay, don't put it down in front of yourself. So you're looking at the back of the scope, and looking at the front of the scope here. Just take the bag off and put it off to the side. Some people will put it in the cubby hole underneath your desk if you want to do there. Speaking of the cubby holes, you'll notice inside the desk where you're sitting is a phone book, which actually it's kind of funny. My wife and I watch Food Network stuff all the time, and this is going to sound like it has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but we were watching the Great Food Truck Road Race last night, if you've seen that, and if you watched last night. There is this interesting wrinkle to last night's episode that the contestants, they drive food trucks and they're trying to sell the most to win money at the end of this. So for last night's challenge, they had their cell phones taken away because food trucks often use social media for advertisement. And so part of what they had to do is to figure out how to promote their food truck without using the internet. And so they took it away. And one of the teams had the incredible idea of using a regular phone. And it was kind of funny because they were the only ones that ever considered the fact that there were phones before cell phones. So at a store they went to, they just asked to borrow a phone. And they also were trying to look up who to call, and they used a phone book. And it was amazing, a woman who, I don't know her actual age, but she must be late 20s, early 30s, didn't know how phone books worked. Okay. Did you know that actually there's two types of phone books? There's a white pages and the yellow pages? Yeah. She didn't know that, which was mind-boggling. But, so I just thought of that when I was about to say, there are phone books in the desks where you're sitting. Now, unless you're in a weird situation where somebody takes your cell phone away and you have to look up the phone number, you probably don't use phone books anymore. So we have them in here because they're best suited now as booster seats. Okay? The way you're going to be looking into the microscope is through these, and it's best to be looking down from this direction. Except that our seats are not really adjustable, or definitely not adjustable, and not really at the right height to do that comfortably for everybody. So if you are at all vertically challenged, please make use of the phone books. Your back will thank you incredibly. And you might just find that you might not consider yourself a short person necessarily, but you do need to look down into that, and so sitting on something is fine. If one is not enough for you, then there's plenty of extra around the room, so you can sit on two. And if you don't feel like sitting on phone books, I've certainly seen people that fold their leg underneath and sit on their foot, and that props them up a bit too. But you will do better if you aren't straining to look down in this. It'll hurt your back and your neck if you're really trying to do that. Okay. So you should have this scope in front of you like this. The cord has been folded up, and I'll explain the folding aspect of it a little later on. On the stage, take that off and plug it in. If it is not folded up on the stage, if the last person used the scope didn't put it back correctly, and they, let's say, wrapped the cord around the base, very carefully take it off. You're not supposed to wrap them around the base because you can damage a lot of the things around it. But if the last person that did that, that used the scope did that, please be careful about unwrapping it and plug it in to the power box in front of you. Now, it might actually be on when you plug it in, which is fine, but some of my colleagues will instruct students to turn it off. The reason for that, presumably, is the idea that when you plug in any light source, there's going to be a little surge of electricity going to the lamp, which could put some strain on the filament or something like that. I don't know if that really is true. Maybe 40 years ago that was true, when you would shorten the life of a light bulb if it was on when you plugged it in, and there'd be this little surge. Nowadays, I don't know if filaments are really that fragile anymore. So I don't know if it's really necessary to do that, but if you see it turned off, there's a switch here in the front to turn it on. If when you do turn it on, and the switch goes from the 0 to 1 position, 1 for on, and you don't really see any light there, there's also a dial on the side, which is for light intensity. And I know this is not necessary, but I think some of my colleagues instruct students to turn this down to 1, which is the lowest setting, and then bring the light up with the dial. So if you turn it on, but it looks like there's no light, check the dial on the side first, and be sure that it's at the right setting. It should be around 6 or 7 for when you start using it. You don't want it all the way up at 10 because that'll be too bright, and you may need more light under certain circumstances. So it's best, most comfortable for your eyes if the light's around 6 or 7 when you start off. Now, if the light doesn't seem to be on when you turn on, and the dial isn't at 1 but is at a higher number, then it could very well be that the bulb has burned out. I have some replacement bulbs up here, so if you can't get it turned on, let me know. It's very easy to change it out. I can do it in under a minute, and that'll take care of things. But if you ask me to change the bulb and I come over, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at that dial on the side. And it happens more often than you think that students say, bulb's burned out or something like that, and I come over and it's not, and it's just they haven't adjusted the brightness. So if you don't want to be embarrassed by me just getting the light to come on magically, then please check that first before you ask questions. The light, of course, is in the base. The light path goes up. What it goes through to begin with is this structure here called the condenser. Condenser here, which is a lens or a series of lenses that help to focus the light beam onto the specimen. You can move a condenser up and down. It has its own little adjustment dial. It really should be in pretty much its highest position all the time for what we're looking at. The lower the condenser is, the weaker the light source will be. So if things are a little bit dark, and you can't figure out why, try moving the condenser up to its highest position. Also on the condenser, and another thing that will definitely affect light, is there's a switch, lever, whatever you want to call it here on the front, which right now is in this left position, well, my left, I guess it's on your right. Inanimate objects that aren't alive, you don't have to think that it has a right that's opposite your right. It's whatever you're looking at. But anyways, it's over here. It should be all the way over on the other side. Okay. If you would like to witness what I'm about to say on your own when you have one, feel free to do this. But when it's all the way over, it looks like there's no light coming through the condenser. And so if I bring it over to the proper position here, you can see the light getting quite big. And you can also, well, I guess you can't really, but what's happening inside is that there's a diaphragm, a little opening that gets smaller and larger depending on the position of that lever, which cuts down on how much light's going through the, how much light is in the light path. And again, we'd like as much light as possible, so it should be over here. I will also often be working with students who are having trouble with stuff, and I'll just notice those sorts of things real quick and open up the light path. And you'll see a world of difference in being able to see and focus on things quickly. But generally speaking, the condenser should be in its pretty much its highest position, and the diaphragm lever, I guess, which is not pointed out there, should be all the way over to this side here, which it's right here left. And these are one of the things, this is the sort of thing that having experience with scopes, you get to the feel for. And so if you're not sure about all this stuff right off the bat, we'll get a chance to make sure you're comfortable. The light then, after it's passed through the condenser, falls on your specimen, which is the slide. It's held on the stage, and the stage really has kind of two components to it, which they don't entirely point out here. Oh, I know why. The stage in the picture here on the screen is slightly different from what we have here. They just point at the mechanical stage, which is accurate for this picture. For the scope that we have here, the mechanical stage is this bar going across and a bar going to the side, and a little caliper here, which can move relative to the stage, which is just the platform that your specimen is sitting on. The mechanical stage holds on your specimen and can move it around within the light path. That's the point of the mechanical stage. With the naked eye, before you ever look through anything like this, you can, with the mechanical stage, make sure that your specimen is lined up in the light path as well as possible. Sometimes what you're looking at is just a little purple speck on the slide, and so if you make sure that's in the light path, when you look through, you'll see you have the best chance of seeing something. Too often people are saying, I can't find anything, I can't get it in focus or whatever, and I come over and I look at it, and what it is, they aren't looking at anything, they're just looking at blank glass. So with your naked eye, you can often center something in the light path so that you know that you're going to be looking at something relatively immediately. The light path then continues up into a lens, which we see here, called an objective lens. There are 4 objective lenses on the nose piece here. The one in the rearmost position is in the working position. For the picture on the screen, the nose piece is oriented the opposite way, so the front one is in the working position for this brand of microscope. But for the ones we're using, it's the rearmost one. And whatever type of microscope you're looking at, it's obviously going to be the one that's vertical. The other ones are at an angle because the nose piece rotates them out of the way. So the vertical one is that's in the light path is the working objective lens that you have. When you first start using the microscope, when you pull it off the, what do we call that? Shelf in the cabinet, that's what I'm trying to say. It should have the shortest of the objective lenses in the working position. That's what's called the scanning objective lens or the 4x objective. 4x refers to the fact that it magnifies things 4 times. Scanning means that it has the lowest magnification factor, and so you can move your specimen around quickly and scan for features that you're looking for. And that's what you should start with. We also have a 10x objective, which we call the low power objective, and a 40x objective, which we call the high power objective. And those 3, the 4x, 10x, and 40x, are the 3 that we're going to use. There's also a very long lens called the 100x objective, or the oil immersion lens. It obviously has a higher magnification, but it requires a drop of oil on the specimen that will be between the lens and the specimen. It helps to focus the light a little bit better. We will not use that for 2 reasons. One, we don't need that much magnification for anything that we're looking at. If you're in micro, you will use the 100x quite a bit to see the very small bacteria that you have to see. But we're not looking at anything that's small, so you don't need it. And the second reason is because it requires a drop of oil, which gets kind of messy. So we just won't use the oil, so we don't have to worry about cleaning up after it and that sort of thing. If you are looking at stuff and you'd like to try to look at use the 100x objective without the oil, you're welcome to. The resolution won't be so great, the light quality will be compromised, but sometimes you can see a little something. But honestly, nothing we're looking at needs that kind of magnification. The light continues up from the working objective into a prism in the headpiece, which bends the light so that it comes out through the oculars. Now, this is a binocular scope, and when I was trying to find the picture that I wanted to show, the first one I pulled up was actually a monocular scope, meaning that only had one ocular, obviously. And just to be consistent as possible with the scope that we're looking at, I pulled this one up. The scope that I'm showing you and the scope that's on the screen here don't quite do what I'm about to describe the exact same way, but that's not terribly important, which is how you adjust for binocularity. Now, nobody has the exact same distance between their 2 eyes, and so the binoculars need to be adjustable. So for the one we have here, they just slide in a straight line side by side, apart from each other. The type that's up on the screen works a little bit differently because the 2 oculars pivot, but you can pivot them so that the distance between them is greater or lesser, which of course we won't be doing. On ours, there's a little scale that slides with the oculars, and it tells you how many millimeters apart the oculars are at any given time. The distance between your 2 pupils is a fixed distance. It doesn't change for your head. So once you do this once, it's kind of redundant, pay attention to that number there, and you just need to set it on that number, and it'll be correct every time. Now, I know my interocular or interpupillary distance actually for a different reason, not because of microscopes, but I wear glasses, and most of you don't have glasses on, but for those of you that do, or those of you that have glasses and just I don't know, feel self-conscious and don't want to wear them in public or whatever. There's a point during which you get the glasses when you're ordering them that you look through this device with both your eyes, and the person, the tech, whoever's doing it, looks through the other end, usually with just one eye. What they're doing is they're seeing how far apart your pupils actually are. Because when you get glasses made, the center of the glass needs to be aligned with your pupil. So I just happened to be paying attention one time when I got glasses done, and I saw what the tech wrote down on my order, and so I know that my interpupillary distance is 65 millimeters apart. So I can just put this on 65 millimeters, and I know that's going to be great for my eyes. If you don't know your interpupillary distance, you really kind of do it empirically, which is to say you look through the two oculars and move them back and forth relative to each other until it's comfortable to look through them, and you see just one circular field of view, one lit up circle through the oculars. If you see two that overlap, then they're not in the right position. Move them back and forth until you see just one. And then once you've done that, make sure you pay attention to the setting numbers so that you can just do that easily every time. The other thing that you need to deal with binocularity is that your eyes are not going to be focused precisely the same. Again, I know more about my eyes because of my prescription, but my right eye has, I think, a prescription of like 20/40 vision, which is not that bad. And actually, I can see pretty well without the glasses. But my left eye has a prescription of 2200 or 2400 or something like that, which is really pretty bad. And the reason for that is when I was a kid in grade school, I used to put my head down on the book like this and just read with one eye, which my teacher said, don't do that because it's going to ruin your eyes. And it turns out it does ruin your eyes. So this eye that was always closed when I was reading is much worse than the other one. So don't do that if you do. If you have kids, tell them not to do that. It's a pain. So anyways, the two oculars are not fixed focus together. You can adjust them separately. The way to do that is to look through the right ocular, close your left eye, and adjust focus as you would for the scope normally, and I'll explain how to do that in a second. And when it's in focus with your right eye, then close your right eye and look with your left eye, and the focus for the left eye is on the ocular. You just spin the ocular back and forth, and when it comes into focus, based on how you focused the stage earlier, then your two eyes will be fine. After you've done that, look at the side of the ocular, left ocular. There's a little scale that has a 0 in the middle with a plus and a negative next to it, and a couple of tick marks in either direction. So if you would normally focus to the first tick mark on the plus side, just remember that you need to focus to 1 plus on that side or something like that, or 2 minus on the other side, or whatever it might be. And every time you sit down, you just put those settings back the way they were from the first time, and it'll be perfect and you'll be ready to go. Having explained all of that, you do not need to use the binocularity on these if you don't feel comfortable with it. I, in fact, don't use it. I don't really feel comfortable with binocular scopes because I really haven't used them that much in my life. And most of my use with binoculars has been in teaching, and I don't set them for my binocularity because I'm usually looking through your scope, and so I don't want to change your binocularity setup for me, and then you have to change it back for you. So I only ever look through the right ocular with one of my eyes, and I just close the other eye. If you would feel more comfortable using this as a monocular scope, that's fine. What you get out of a binocular scope, the sort of hint of depth perception, isn't really relevant to what we're doing here, so it's okay if you don't want to use both. Sometimes people just aren't comfortable getting it all set up with their eyes or whatever. But if you only use one ocular, be sure that you use the right ocular. Not that you can see it from where I'm holding it up, but as I take the ocular out, inside there's a little metal pin. And that gets superimposed on the field of view So that's the pointer. Okay. If you look just through the left ocular, you will see no pointer. You have to look through the right ocular to see the pointer. And sometimes I'm pointing at something, whether it's if I'm helping you with your scope, or there will be times when you're looking at things through the microscope on a test or something like that. So be sure you look through the right ocular, because that's the one with the pointer. Now, let me talk a little bit about focus. The focus knobs, there are two of them. There's a big one for coarse focus adjustment, and there's a little one for fine focus adjustment. I'll just refer to those as coarse focus and fine focus. When you have the 4x objective in the working position, use the coarse focus knob, which you can see visibly changes the height of the stage. Now, when you get the scope out from the cabinet, the stage should be at its highest position. From there, you probably only need to go down a little bit to hit focus. If you're way down here, the bottom of the stage's range of motion, you're not in focus. The focal plane really is just a little bit below the top of the stage's range of motion. The way that a scope like this works is that all of the objectives should be confocal, which means that they should have the same relative focal settings. So once you get the 4x in focus, when you move to the 10x, it should be pretty close to focus. All you'll need to do is do a little bit of a fine focus adjustment with the fine focus knob. In fact, other than the 4x objective, you should only use the fine focus knob. Okay. The reason for that is the working distance between the specimen and the objective gets shorter and shorter as you move to the higher magnification objectives, and you don't want to move the stage up and run into the underside of the objective when you can see how much it's moving. Now, actually, with the fine focus knob, you are moving the stage up and down a little bit too, but so little that you don't see it move. If you sit here and you crank the fine focus knob over and over again, eventually the stage will move perceptible distance. So you should not ever be cranking the fine focus knob that much. Okay? It should never move enough to actually run into the objective. It's just for adjusting little tweaks to get it in focus. When you do that, when you're using the fine focus knob, move a little bit in one direction, maybe one rotation in one direction. If that doesn't do it, move back one rotation to where it was originally, and then go one rotation in the other direction. If that doesn't quite do it, go back one rotation to where you were to begin with, and go a little bit further in the other direction. And just kind of keep moving back and forth so that you can hit the focal plane. If it's not in focus and you keep turning it in the same direction, you're going to probably move further and further out of focus. So just go back and forth a little bit around where the 4x objective was in focus. Okay. And then when you move to the 40x objective, it's the same thing. It should be pretty close to focus. And you just need to adjust the focus a little bit in one direction or the other. Now, the fact that you're going to be using the same scope over and over again means that you're going to get comfortable with its particular quirks in focus. For some scopes, you need to go, clockwise to get fine focus adjusted, and for others, you need to go counterclockwise. And it's just that particular scope, exactly how the lenses are seated and the differences. There are actually some scopes that you don't have to adjust fine focus, that they are in fact truly confocal. That you get the 4x objective in focus, and the other objectives will be in focus automatically. The difference is just has to do with, there might be a little bit of grit in the screw threads in the objective, so it's not seated exactly perfectly, so it's not perfectly confocal. So there might be a little adjustment, and just you'll get used to using your scope and how it's going to adjust fast. A lot of students will think that, there's obviously plenty of room between the 4x objective and the specimen. And they might get a little concerned that when they move the objectives to higher and higher magnification, that they're going to run into the specimen. And I've seen some people who will move the stage down, go to the next objective, and then try to get that in focus. Do not do that. The idea that they're confocal is important because it'll just take forever or be nearly impossible to get, say, the 40x objective into focus from a setting that's just way out of focus. So get it in focus and then move. And the scope is designed so that you will not hit the specimen. It's impossible, or nearly impossible, for that to be a problem. And the kind of situation where that nearly impossible comes into effect isn't going to damage anything. There are some situations, I don't know if it's all the scopes necessarily, but one of the slides that we look at is a piece of bone which has been shaved as thin as possible, but still being bone is kind of hard, so it's hard to get a really thin slice of bone. And so the slide's just thicker than most. And when you go to the 40x objective, the objective will actually be touching the specimen, which means that it's impossible to get it into focus. But that's the only situation where you actually run into anything. And you'll see that when I'm working with these, if I know that it's in the focus with a 4x objective, I'll just freely spin that nose piece around because I know that it's never going to run into the specimen there. It's always going to be fine. Sometimes the working distance seems like it's non-existent, like it's a millimeter or less, but it's there. There's going to be some little bit of clearance and you can move things. Do not use the coarse focus adjustment at all with longer objectives than the 4x. Okay? Don't change the height of the stage before you move, because then it'll be impossible to get things back in this focus. If you're having problems focusing and you ask me for assistance, I'll come over and look, and I'll look at the working distance to begin with, how far the specimen is from the objective. And sometimes when it's too far away, I know that's the reason that you're out of focus. And what you need to do is go back to 4x, get that in focus, and then work up through the 10x and 40x. Now, some people might feel that they can just go from 4x to 40x and get things in focus. And with some scopes, that's possible. But if you have trouble with that, it's best to step through 4x, 10x, 40x. Students will often say, well, which objective should I use? And my answer will always be all of them. Okay? Get used to looking at things with all the different magnifications because you see different things of interest. With the scanning objective, you see sort of all of the tissue. And with the lower power and the high power, it's different. So this poster that I have up here of the urinary system kind of illustrates that. With the scanning objective, you're going to see most of the tissue. This happens to be a frontal plane through the kidney. And then when you go to the 10x objective, you're going to see some detail in the tissue. You'll be able to see individual nuclei, the dots that represent them, but not a whole lot of detail about the cells. And then when you go to a higher power, you'll get more detail. So for instance, the whole kidney here is an 11x magnification, which is actually a little bit less than what you'd see through the 4x objective. And then this is 300 and this is 1300. So the magnification factors here don't quite correspond to this, but that's the idea, that you can see different aspects of detail. Now I describe this as 4x, 10x, and the 40x objectives. That's their magnification factor. But when you're looking through the scope, you are seeing a couple of magnifications together. If you look at the side of one of the oculars, and you don't have to pull it out to see this, it says there CWHK, which I don't actually know what that stands for, 10x. Okay. That means that the oculars have a 10x magnification factor. When you look through two lenses, each with their own magnification factor, the total magnification you get by combining those together, by multiplying those magnification factors together. So if we're looking through the 4x objective, while we have the 10x ocular in place there, what's the overall magnification? 40, right. So up there I was saying that frontal kidney section up there is 11x, and I said that's less than what you see with this. The reason why is because actually when you're using the 4x objective, you're getting 40x total magnification. So we won't see the whole kidney like that, but you'll see kind of a good bit of the tissue. And then when you go up to the 10x objective and the 40x objective, you got to keep in mind the magnification factor actually changes with the total magnification. So the other ones there were 300 and 1300. And so you can kind of think about what the total magnification would be here. It's not precisely the same, but it does give you an idea. I said that earlier that I have more experience with electron microscopes, and they are capable of magnifying much higher resolution, sometimes in the millions of times resolution. And you can see a lot more detail with them. And they work on very different principles. But we're just going to be working with these, and so the kind of magnification we get is just based on the 10x objectives, 10x oculars and the various magnifications of objectives there. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is what to do when you clean up, when you're done. And putting these back properly is an important part to make sure that these scopes last as long as they possibly can. So the care of the microscope sheet up here on the door is instructions basically for what you need to do when you put things away. It's on this particular pane of glass so that everybody can see it at the end of the class when they put things away. The first thing you want to do is clean optics with lens paper. We keep the lens paper in the supply cabinet. I will try to remember to pull the lens paper out, put it here on the countertop before we're doing microscope work. But if I forget, you can go in and grab that. I would suggest that you actually grab the lens paper when you're getting the scope to begin with, just so that when you're ready to clean up, you don't have to get up and grab lens paper and then clean up. You have lens paper handy to clean up when you need it. Now, optics just refers to any of the glass. Okay? So what you want to do, I should have a piece of lens paper. What you want to do is you want to clean off the various lens surfaces with the lens paper. Now, it's important that you use lens paper and not a Kleenex or something like that, because the paper is essentially paper fibers, wood pulp fibers that are woven together. And the weave, so to speak, not that somebody does it on a loom or something like that, but the fibers are much more densely packed in the lens paper. And so little particles can't get caught in between the fibers and the lens paper, which means that there's not going to be any real abrasive surfaces here to deal with. Don't use a Kleenex kind of thing or something like that, because this is a much looser paper fibers, and there's things in there that can scratch glass potentially. Only use a lens paper. Don't use a paper towel. You should also use a different spot on the lens paper for each piece of glass. You don't want to transfer dirt from one piece of glass to another. So there's lots of space here, just keep moving around the different parts. You should start with the objectives. Just clean off the underside of each one. And again, a different spot on the lens paper. The 4x objective is a little bit inverted, so you have to kind of stick the paper up into a cone space there, but get in there. You do want to clean off the 100x objective, even though you didn't use it, just to be sure it's clean. If you see a dot of something wet on the lens paper after you do that, that's just because somebody didn't clean oil off of it very well last time. And be sure that you don't transfer that oil to a different piece of glass. And then clean off the oculars, and the condenser and the light source, just to get dust off of those. That order is kind of the best. The objectives, the oculars, the condenser, and the light source. Now the next thing it says is switch off the light. Okay. You don't switch the light off before you clean the lens, because sometimes you can see dust and dirt a little bit better if there's light shining on it. So then turn off the light. I really should commit this to memory a little better. Okay. Then, and I've already actually done this, make sure the 4x objective is in the working position at this point. So when I did the oculars cleaning them off, I made sure it ended up in that position. But if you didn't do that, be sure it's there at this point. I don't think it actually says unplug, but you obviously need to unplug the cord. And then you want to fold the cord up, sort of the way that it's already ready to be folded. When we bought these, they had a little twist tie around them, holding them in this configuration. We've been folding them the exact same way for the most part, the whole time we've had them. Okay, so it's what I call the factory installed folds in the cord. Just fold it up like that, and place that on the back of the stage, like so. Now there are a few scopes that have been mishandled over the years, and they don't fold up quite the same way. It might be that somebody at some point took it and wrapped it around their fingers or their hand, and so the folds are much shorter together. But the idea is, don't make your own new folds however it folds up, put it that way, and stick it on the stage. And then raise the stage to its highest position using the coarse adjustment knob. Okay. That'll help to kind of trap the cord in place. The fact that you have the 4x objective in the working position at this point is good, because then if there's any cord that's kind of sticking out, it's not going to run into any of the objectives. Is that it? And then put the dust cover on it? Mm-hmm. So put the dust cover on it, and you're ready to put it away. And of course, you're going to carry it, one hand on the arm underneath the plastic bag and one hand on the base, and you put it back. Okay. Yeah, so I covered all of that. Oh, I didn't say this about folding the cord, but I did kind of say it earlier. Don't wrap the cord around the base. Now, some people do that, and they really shouldn't. If you get your scope out and it's not put back the way that you should expect it to be put back based on this, let me know. I'd like to remind whoever's in charge of labs, before we meet. So that'd be, I think a lab meets here on Saturdays. So I can tell the instructor that's here for the Saturday lab that his students didn't put things back properly. So feel free to let me know about that. And I will occasionally look at the scopes here to make sure people are putting them back correctly. So I'll give you a little bit of feedback about how you're doing it. But please follow those rules there. Okay. Any questions about using the scopes? Okay. Okay, so